Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the RepPath Podcast. Today's episode is definitely for people that are looking to break into the industry. So before we get into this, guys, always want to give some housekeeping before we start. First and foremost, if you want to get a copy and see a recording of this podcast, please make sure that you are subscribed. Also, today we are live on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We're also on every podcast platform. And for all you individuals that are watching this, if you're trying to break in, the first thing you're going to do after this call is reach out to me either at RepPath.com, RepPath. You could see it right there with the link below, or DM me on LinkedIn to learn more about the RepPath Academy, guys. So first thing you do after this call, contact me for that. We will help you break into this industry. That's what we do for individuals. You know, we place thousands of people around the country. We're constantly placing new reps every day. So if you're really interested and you're motivated to get into this industry, make sure you're reaching out to me to learn more about the RepPath Academy today. So, okay, guys. So today's topic.
Real quick questions halfway through.
Thank you. Sorry. That's why I have James, guys. James, put questions in the chat, guys. Anybody from this moment on, and then halfway through the show, we're going to address any questions that you guys submitted from the audience. So please, anything on your mind. Obviously, if we could stay on topic, that's great. But if not, feel free to ask me anything, and I'll address it halfway, throughout this podcast. Excuse me. So today we're talking about the reality of medical sales. Okay. The good, the bad, the ugly. All right, guys. So I'm going to be, as always, I'm straight up. There's no bullshit. I'm going to tell you what's real. All right. This isn't here to just be, super positive or super negative. So some things come out that you're like, wow, that doesn't sound good. I'm just being real. And these are my experiences. So you might ask other people and say, what the hell is he talking about? He doesn't know what he's saying. I didn't think it was like that, and that's great. That's their experience too. But I feel confident enough that I am an expert in this space, that I've been doing this for almost 25 years. So you could take my opinion. If you value it, great. If you don't, I respect that too. So, but again, this is my true, real experiences. So if things aren't exactly what you think and they're not sunshine and rainbows, sorry, but this is supposed to be a very real podcast as always. So we don't sugarcoat here. All right. So most of you get into this industry just like I did. You know someone that was already in the industry, or a friend of a friend, a cousin, an aunt, an uncle, whoever it is that is already in the industry or knows someone in the industry. Most of the time, all you get are all the positives. Med device reps, they make a ton of money. They give you a company car. You're free every day. They don't even work 5 days a week. Some of them only work 2 days a week. I know my one friend, he's only worked 3 days the past month because his territory is cranking and he's still the number one rep. It's always the positives, right? That you still, guys, while some of that is true, of course that's not 100% true. And it's not just all sunshine and rainbows, guys. It's just not. So we're going to go over that, and what is real. But that's mainly one of the reasons why people get into this, and they do a little research. They'll go online, they'll maybe reach out to one or two people, but they don't really know what they're getting themselves into. And that's important, because I don't care if it's med sales, I don't care if it's another type of sales position, whatever industry you're looking to get into, guys, you should think of this as it's a career change or a career opportunity. For anyone, because I get these calls a lot too, that you're trying to figure it out, but you're not really sure if this is for you, then I don't suggest you move forward. You got to be 100% committed, because the competition is insane. All right. I say this on many of the podcasts. We get 300 to 500 applications for every opening that we have. All right. That's a lot of applications, guys. All right. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of people that just throw shit up against the wall and hope it sticks, and they just apply to everything. All right. I don't agree with that mentality because it doesn't work. We have seen it not work. But if people choose to do that, that's fine. But when you get ghosted, no one gets back to you, there's a reason why. So but out of the 3 to 500, there's still a good chunk of those candidates that are great candidates. So you're going against real competition, and they want this. They'll sell their soul to get into this industry. Some of them want it that bad. So you have to, if you don't really want it that bad, and you don't want to compete with that kind of mentality, odds are you're not going to be successful, or you're not going to be happy in this business. So you really have an understanding of what you're getting yourself into. If you want to schedule a call with me, we could talk about that to see if this is really a fit for you. Okay, but you have to have the commitment. Any of us that any of the candidates that we work with at the RepPath Academy, the reason why we're so successful with getting them placed is because that's one of the non-negotiables. If you're not going to put the effort in, then we don't want you a part of the academy, because we want to work with the individuals that really want to make a difference, that really want this. So same as going to your personal trainer. If you don't put the effort in and you're working out 1 day a week, an hour a week with your trainer, and then you're coming back in 3 months saying, I didn't lose any weight. Well, it's only because you're only working out when you're with me. You're not eating right. You're not going to the gym the other 6 days out of the week. So of course you're not going to see the results. It's the same thing in this business. If you don't put the effort in, you're going to get eaten up. So really make sure you know what you want. All right. And there's many resources. That's what we're here for, to help you get a real clear understanding of what you're getting yourself into. So the good. These are the good things about medical sales. All right. Number one, the autonomy to be on your own. One of the in terms of most sales reps, it's hard for them. I know for me, you can never put me in an office all day long. Even when I'm on calls training people all day, I have to move around. I'll be walking and talking. I just have to be outside a lot. I have to be walking around, my office. I can't just sit at a desk all day for 8 hours a day. It's just not in me, because I've been doing sales for so long. And most of you are like that out there. So to be in your car all day long, having the freedom to, quote unquote, do what you want. If you have to go to the cleaners, during the day, run some errands, whatever it is, most companies don't care. Get your job done, do what you have to do during the day. No one's going to bust you for that. So that's a great thing about being in this business. The other thing is the pay, but we want to be realistic, because a lot of people out there, these misperceptions and flat out bullshit gets created because people say that every rep is making $500,000 to $1 million. Everyone's crushing it in medical sales. That's just not true. Here's the real facts. The average rep makes about $172,000 a year. That's the average medical sales rep. You guys are going to be on this call and say, what the hell is he talking about? My buddy made $350 last year. My cousin made $275. That's not true. That might be in one industry, not the other. Guys, overall, in primarily med device, diagnostics, and pharma, the average is about 172, right? These are the real numbers. Some reps are making 300 plus. There's about 7% of all sales reps out there make over $300,000 a year consistently. It's not easy. Now, 300 could be a lot to some people and not to the others. I'm just saying these are the facts. So whether you think 170 is a lot, 300 is a lot, these are the real numbers of what reps make. And typically, depending on your what field you choose, whether it's med device or pharma, pharma typically pays a higher base to start, and they'll give you a quarterly bonus. Device will pay a little bit lower. So for real numbers, say you'll start out between 65 to 80 in pharma, but your bonuses will be quarterly bonuses where you can make, all in comp to 100 to say 125. I'm saying first year salaries all in. And device might be lower, might be 50 to 60 when you start, but you're going to get monthly commissions, quarterly commissions that typically are much higher than that, where you can get to 120, 150 in your first year. Excuse me. So as you get more experience, obviously those go up. There's reps that go up to 200,000 in base because they're in rare disease, and it can make up to, 500,000-600,000 a year when it all in with their total OTE. So those numbers are possible, but the reality is you're going to be, the average rep is in that 150 to 200 range when it's all said and done. The other great thing about the business, though, is you're going to get either a company car or a car allowance with 95% of the companies. You're going to get a gas card. They're going to pay for your cell phone, medical, dental, vision, 401k, expense account, entertainment budget. All these great benefits are going to be involved in most of the companies. So that's a great thing. So whatever your total comp is, you got to add and factor that in, because that could be another 50,000 plus if you were doing it, for, say, as opposed to, you got to add that to your total OTE, because that's pretty much what that is worth on a yearly basis. So those benefits are great. You're also going to be working with doctors every day. Now, we'll talk about the bad too, but when you're having those intelligent conversations, those high-level clinical conversations, and especially as you get better at it, because when you start, it's a struggle. You're learning something new. It's not easy for anybody. But the better you get at that, it's such a rewarding feeling, guys, especially when you give a suggestion that impacts a patient's life and you see it. If you're in a medical device surgery, and I'll give you one quick story, because this is one of my favorite stories that I had that motivated me to get into the business. I was selling spinal cord stim for Boston Scientific. And when we would do cases, you would do a trial where the patient, we implant the wire, which was the stimulator, up by their spinal cord. And then they leave with a remote control, and they can control their pain for a week to see if this works. If it works, then they give them a permanent spinal cord stimulator device where it's implanted in the body. So before her trial and before all patients' trials, when I would meet with them to tell them who I am and what my role is in the surgery, because I'm a part of the surgery. I sit at the end of the table next to the anesthesiologist. And when we connect the wires, I'm speaking to the patient to make sure we get that tingling, massaging feeling to get rid of their pain in the right areas. And then you're basically married to that patient after that, because if they have any problems, they're going to reach out to you. So I noticed this patient, number one, it was in January in New York City. She was wearing shorts. When I'm not joking, it was probably 8 degrees out. And she had a leash in her hand and a pair of jeans. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? Why is she carrying a dog leash and a pair of jeans? Why isn't she wearing her jeans? Right? So quickly, these are thoughts. Of course, I didn't say anything. I let her speak. And then quickly, she said, the goals of this, because I'm sure you're wondering, why am I carrying a leash and jeans in my hand? She's like, my goal is to be able to put on a pair of jeans, because I haven't been able to wear pants in 10 years because she had such terrible nerve pain going down her legs that the jeans going over her skin was excruciating. That's how bad some of these patients had it. And then she's like, I want to put on a pair of jeans and be able to walk my dog, take my dog for a walk. And it's like, wow, like this was very real, very emotional. She was crying when she was saying it, that this is all she wants. So fast forward now, the trial goes well. We're 3 days into the trial where she's, in contact with me every day. One day she calls me hysterically crying. And I'm thinking, wow, something happened. This is actually causing her more pain. I'm thinking the worst. And she was crying with tears of happiness because she said this is the first time in 10 years she was able to put on a pair of jeans and take her dog for a walk because she had zero pain. Guys, that moved me so much that, the money's great. All the bells and whistles, great. You don't give a shit about anything else at that point. You're like, I'm seeing the patient. This is a real human being telling me what I did for her. Like, I created this system. I didn't do anything. The doctor put it in. I assisted, did my little part. But again, this doesn't take, intense medical training or anything to do what I did. I did the company training, which they did an amazing job training you. But it was really nothing on my part. Someone else could have done the same thing if they replaced me tomorrow. But the fact that I was a part of that, and I was like, wow, this is someone that, their story made me feel great I can't tell you how long, but there were many of those that would happen where patients would reach out to you, thank you, this is amazing. Or when you're in a case and a doctor thanks you because you give a suggestion that gets them out of a little bit of jam, or you're able to answer a question on the fly. Because especially when you're in these surgeries, you see real lives at stake. If you could have a positive impact with that, guys, there's no better feeling in the world. So that to me is one of the best benefits that has nothing to do with money that you only are going to get in this industry. There's very few that you're hands-on with patients that they can cry to you, thanking you what you did for them. It's an amazing feeling, guys. So that's one of the things that really motivated me to continue in this field, because when that happens, again, there's no better sense of self-worth that you have, to be in this industry. So again, these are some of the positives. You're also having clinical conversations with nurses, with other hospital staff. It's very real what you're selling. You're not selling pointless little widgets that really people don't really care. If you didn't show up next week, they're going to move on with their lives. This is important stuff. So these are some of the pros for me. Now let's talk about some of let's talk about the bad. All right, the bad, the realistic, some of the negatives that you're dealing with. First off, the volatility in this industry. It's insane. Going to be straight up with you guys. You think you're going to go and work 30 years for the same company? It's not going to happen. Small percentage have been at the same company their entire career. I probably had 7 different jobs in my 20 plus years that again, not the company's fault. Things just sometimes happen. I was laid off 3 times. One was a conference call that they literally just said, you guys are all terminated today, and a couple thousand people were all laid off. So you're like, wow, it's like a punch to the gut. It's cold, but it's real. I mean, this is business. So if for whatever reasons it could be reimbursements have dropped. It could be in pharma when, the patent on a medication expires. It could be an acquisition where a company buys someone out and then they get rid of half the sales force because they already have sales reps. Or it could be a territory realignment, which sucks. When you're cranking in your territory, and this happens sometimes, you're killing it. You're the top rep, but now your territory has grown so much that they split it. And then they put someone else in there and then give you half the territory. So trust me, a lot of times it affects your commissions. Now you can be making half the commissions. That sucks. You didn't do anything wrong. Now all of a sudden you're in your territory has been cut in half. Or they have a realignment and now they move you from New York. Now you're covering Pennsylvania and you're starting all over. You get new management during realignments where you loved your old manager and now you have this new person. That's not great. Don't get me wrong. If your manager sucks and now you get someone new, that's a good thing. But a lot of times, there's a lot of great managers out there. You enjoy working with them. Now all of a sudden you got someone new. So that happens. It's going to happen, right? So you got to be prepared for that. A lot of times when you're on your own, it's great. A lot of us don't like to work with our managers. You can love them as a person, but when you're working with doctors and now you got a manager standing behind you and it creates this awkward feel like you're being graded, which sometimes you are. I mean, you're always being graded. I shouldn't say sometimes. You are always being graded. Some managers are better at treating you like a colleague and a team member and going out there like they should. And then some managers don't handle it well and they treat it like you're the student, they're the teacher, and they're going to grade you on the test. And it's awkward. No one wants their boss to stand behind them as they're working. It's uncomfortable. So to me, that was one of the negatives, even though I love some of my managers, but very few times, did I really, unless I really needed them, do you really want your manager there? Let's be real, guys. Unless you're having a difficult conversation or you need approval, if you're confident in your sales abilities, that was something that I didn't always love. And I know most reps don't love. So these are just some of the negatives. Sometimes also the hours can be unpredictable. Now, depending on what field you choose, if you go into pharma is going to rarely go past 5 o'clock at night. Reason being because they're office hours. The office hours, you're primarily going into doctor's offices. Again, you could be a hospital sales rep too, but nobody's calling on doctors at nighttime. You're not in cases, so the hours are going to be much less in pharma than they are in device. I was in cases till 2 a.m. sometimes, guys, and I left my house at 6 a.m. So literally a 20-hour day could happen. Is that normal? No, it's rare, but it does happen. I can't tell you how many times I had dinner plans canceled. I don't have kids, but if I did, you're going to have to make the sacrifice. You're not going to be at that kid's practice or their game after school. You want to go to the gym every day at 4:00. That's not happening. Or even 6:00. It's not happening. You're going to have times where your schedule is unpredictable. You're on a doctor's schedule, essentially. Things change for them. If you're a part of that procedure, guess what? It's changing for you too. Because you can't say, hey, doc, if you don't get this done by 5:00, screw you. He's going to go, great, that's fine. I got 10 other reps that will do this procedure with me. So either you suck it up and you deal with those cancellations, those delays, or you're going to have to deal, with losing that account, right? So again, there's a ton more pros and cons in this business. One of the cons that for me, for pharma, and again, thought both were great. They were very rewarding, worked for great places. Pharma, for me, I got bored. I wanted to be more hands-on. So a lot of times you're walking into offices over and over and over, talking about the same drug every day. The doctor knows everything about that drug, but you still got to call on that individual, and you get bored. They'll say to you, Joe, I know everything about, Lipitor. I don't need you coming in every day. I don't need you coming in once a week. I get it. Don't worry about it. And so it's hard. The challenge is you got to keep it fresh and continue to provide value where it doesn't get stale. But it's not easy because there's only so many studies out there. There's only so many white papers and things you could present, detail aids, before you have to, use them over and try to get fresh and creative, which is fun sometimes, don't get me wrong. But then there's sometimes you're like, I'm just bored. If I'm not here, he's just going to use another drug. So it's not that big a deal. When I was in device, yes, they can use someone else tomorrow too. But a lot of times you're providing more value because either sometimes when you're working with patients, the patients love you. So the doctor sees that. So it's not just about the drug. It's not just about your device. It's like, no, Joe has a big impact with my patients. I want to keep working with him because they love him. So that's real. So that could be a good thing too. But a lot of times for me in pharma and some of the businesses, when you're doing the same thing every day to the same customers, it could get boring. All right. And you feel this sense of, I had like a lack of self-worth some days where I'm like, what did I do? I just dropped off samples today, brought in a lunch. I did a breakfast in the morning, did a lunch in the afternoon, had conversations, great clinical conversations, but I just wanted more hands-on in the OR. That was just for me. All right. So for me, that was a negative. But again, people can look at sitting in an OR till, after 12:00 at night as a big negative. So the quality of life you're going to get in pharma, if you want more freedom, then pharma is the route to go. All right. So again, guys, this isn't going to be every day. Some of these horror stories happen once in a blue moon, but they do happen. So I'm just making you prepared, not scaring you. All right. So don't take that this is to scare you off. All right. I want to see you all kill it in this industry and do really well because you could, but I don't want to see you get into something without having all the facts, because most people are going to give you all sunshine. They're not going to give you, any of the raining clouds. All right. So you need that. All right. So last, I just want to make sure on my notes. Yeah. Another negative, depending if you're in the hospital space or capital space, sales cycles. Could be a long sales cycle, guys, depending. You're not, especially in hospital sales. Pharma, you can walk in, the doctor could say, Joe, I love this. You know what? The next patient, I'm going to prescribe your drug. And you might not see the numbers because sometimes they're delayed a month or two, but you can make a sale that day, essentially. A doctor in med device could say, Joe, I love this. Go speak to Bob, my scheduler, and book me a case. We have a case next Tuesday. Tell him I want to use you for that case and try your product out. Awesome. Best feeling, you closed that day. Then there's capital equipment or some hospital-based pharmaceutical sales that you want to make. they take time. So that same pharmaceutical product that you have, now it's got to get approved by the P&T committee. That's the Pharmacy and Therapeutics Committee of the hospital. So these are individuals that meet once a month, once every quarter, whatever it changes for every hospital. And they have to agree on a product first to get it approved to put it on their formulary. That's their list of drugs that the doctors can use. So you can't go in there and just say, use my drug. And the doctor goes, that's a great idea. Give me one of those. I'm going to give it to a patient today. No, obviously it's ridiculous. It's got to get on the formulary first. And the only way it does that is by getting approved by the P&T committee. That could take months, sometimes years. Same with medical devices. A lot of times the products are on what's called the GPO. The group purchasing organization buys for a group of hospitals. All right. So they do that for buying power so they get better prices. So if you're not on, say, Premier or HPG, these are different types of GPOs, the doctor can't use your product in the hospital. And again, guys, it's got to meet with a different committee. This is the VAC committee, which is the value analysis committee. So if you meet with them, you got to meet. You can't even be at those meetings, by the way, both P&T and VAC. You need a champion that's going to go in there. That's a physician. It's going to go in there and sell your product basically to everyone else and justify why they should be using this. Guys, you think it's hard enough to sell a product by yourself and you're the one that you do this for a living and you know everything about that product? Try training someone that's got to go in and sell it. That they're a doctor that has a million other important things to do each day. The last thing they're thinking about is really pushing your product. A lot of them don't give a shit that much. And when you're in these meetings, it's not going to be the same enthusiasm that you have, but you have to do it that way because you're not even allowed in the meeting. So that can get challenging too and very frustrating, but it's part of the process. So you got to have that resilience to say, I'm in this for the long haul. And to get that rejection every day, it's challenging. Or to wait and that they're not meeting for 2 more months to decide at the next VAC committee. Now you got your company breathing down your neck. That's frustrating. And it's nerve-wracking because it gets stressful. This isn't your problem. They're not meeting. You can't do anything else, but you still have to wait. So you got to balance that with your company and set expectations. So to calm their frustrations, but also you can't push too hard because it's not going to get you anywhere if they're not going to meet for 2 months. So again, these are some of the challenges. The last challenge that a lot of reps face is imposter syndrome. So what do I mean by imposter syndrome? When you come into especially in the device world, you come into an operating room for the first time, you're going to see the nurse, the scrub tech, the scrub nurse, the circulating nurse, the doctor, the anesthesiologist. These are all people that are in the room. They're all laughing, joking. Everyone knows each other. Everyone has this calm, cool demeanor. There's a patient on the table. There's a heart surgery going on. You're sitting there like deer in the headlights, like, holy shit. I'm nervous as hell for this patient that it goes well. And everyone else is calm and cool. They know they're throwing out terminology and acronyms. They're asking you about stuff that you're like, what the hell did that doctor just say? I have no idea what they're talking about. So there's 2 things you could do. You could say, I don't know what you mean. Every comment they say that you don't understand and look like an idiot. Or you don't lie if you don't know something, especially with a patient on the table, but you try to pick up and try to learn, so a lot of times they feel like they don't belong. That's where the imposter syndrome comes from. They feel like I don't really belong here. Everyone else here is smarter than me. I'm not as good. I shouldn't really be here. I'm not qualified. This doctor went to school for 12 years, with residency and internship and everything. How can I be in the same room as this individual? And you got to get that out of your head, guys. You got to own it yourself. And we talk about this at the RepPath Academy every day. It's about own your own. All right. That's our slogan. Own your own development. That's one of the key things you can do. So for any of these roles, you should feel like you don't belong and you want to get that mental misperception out of your head because you're going to learn and force yourself to become an expert. You're never going to be a doctor, guys, unless you go to med school. All right. So it's not about being as knowledgeable as the doctor, but you could learn even more than the doctor in this specific space that you're selling. Be the best at what you're doing in your little niche space. Again, I'll relate back to spinal cord stim. My goal was to be the best with spinal cord stim. That doesn't mean I'm going to sit here and pretend I'm a pain specialist or I'm a spine specialist and I know everything about spine and pain. Absolutely not. I didn't want to. I just wanted to be the best for spinal cord stim. So in all those cases, I'm in control. It's always the doctor's operating room, and anything that happens, it's on the doctor, but you want to be in control. So when you see reps a lot of times quiet, it's not because they don't know anything. It's that they're confident. They're calm. These are usually the best reps. They don't just bark out orders and yell things. Mostly, a lot of times, those are the reps that weren't as confident. So they felt like they had to say something every 2 seconds to the doctor to prove how smart they were, how much they knew. No, the good reps were just in control. They let the case go. When the doctor speaks to them, they're ready. When someone asks them a question, they know the answers. So you can be that rep. That's the goal, but you got to put the work in and work on your development. You don't wait for the company to teach you these things. You're going online and learning, going on YouTube, researching cases, researching different videos. If you don't know terms, write them down, learn the terms. Trust me, they're going to come up again. You're going to hear a bunch of different acronyms. You're going to be like, what the hell are they talking about? I just hear letters coming out of their mouths. I don't know what they mean. Write them down and look them up. And because they're going to keep coming up again. But you got to own it. You got to own that development, because when you get to that place where you're looked at as a resource for people in the operating room. I had times I came into cardiology surgeries and the doctor, was saying, oh, Joe, thank God you're here. Here's a challenge we're having. And when you help them navigate that problem, guys, it's amazing. It's an amazing feeling. And I'm very average intelligence, maybe even below average, but I always tried my best to become an expert in that field. So you got to do that, because you don't want that imposter syndrome, because it's going to show when you don't know what the hell you're doing. It's okay in the first case, but as you are in there more and more, you got to learn, because they're not going to keep using you if you don't really know what the hell you're doing, because again, there's patients' lives in the line. All right. So some of the ugly, like we talked about, every industry, guys, there's a lot of internal politics. So this isn't really specific to device or pharma or, medical sales. There's things that happen that are frustrating. You can be the number one rep in a territory, again, looking to get into management, and all of a sudden a realignment happens or a merger happens, and now you're laid off. You just put in 5 years. So now you got to go find another job that you've been in, say neurology for the past 5 years. You know everything about the brain. And now all of a sudden you got to start over, because the one company that wants you, that happens to be in your area that you live, is an anesthesia company. And now you got to learn anesthesia, which mostly doesn't have much to do with neurology. So you're learning a new body parts, new anatomy, new terminology. You're working with new doctors. It's like you started all over again. That sucks. It does. It's not like being in finance where people are doing it for 40 years. They get more and more knowledgeable in one subject. So you go from anesthesia, because in my background, I was in OBGYN, anesthesia, pain, cardiology, spine. You have to learn and pivot, and it's not impossible, but it sucks to start back over. Plain English. It sucks. So you don't have your wish list when a company lays you off to say, you know what, Joe, I'm only going to stay in neurology. So only show me neurology jobs. I'll say, no problem. You might not hear from me for 9 months or a year, but I'll only show you neurology jobs. So you got to be prepared for that, guys. All right. Next, sometimes being alone isn't for everyone. So when you're in the car every day by yourself, that sometimes gets lonely too. Thank God now, from when I started, where it was either listening to the radio or calling friends and family. And I was on the road, sometimes 8-10 hours a day. You're stopping at offices, then you have 45 minutes to your next office. You get bored. I can't listen to music and radio all day. So I would start, you call people and try to get, and try to just have conversations. But a lot of people don't have your job. So there's only so many people you could reach out to that could answer your calls during the day, because they're in an office or they don't have a phone on them. or whatever it is. So that could get lonely. Thank God they got now, you can listen to audiobooks, you can listen to podcasts, do other things to keep yourself busy as you're driving, but it does get lonely. There is a sense of isolation. You have to, getting back to owning your own development, you have to make sure that you don't get on an island where you're not growing, because that happens a lot too, where individuals, they're not, proactively trying to grow. You're not going to see someone on a daily basis that is showing you what they do. So you have to proactively reach out to those high performing sales reps. You want to work with your manager to get better, but you're not doing that every day. So sometimes that could be challenging. And that's one of the things they don't really talk to you about. So you got to have that motivation to grow and have that, own your own development, or you will fall behind. Okay. Last, again, guys, just to sum up, because I know I want to open up for some questions out there. Bottom line, guys, there's highs and lows in every job. This isn't unique. I'm just giving you the specifics, little overview. There's way more we could talk about. And we talk about this in the academy. We talk about the real challenges. I just want to give a quick snapshot, but there's no industry out there that doesn't have it has its pros and cons. There's nothing that's just perfect. So I just wanted to give a little snippet of the challenges that are out there, because I know a lot of you just hear about all the good things and you don't have a real understanding of what really goes on. So I'm going to stop here for a second, take a quick water break. And James, do you have any questions for the audience?
Well, first I have to say, Joe, I had to really bite my tongue when you started talking about your level of intelligence.
I was making sure you're still listening.
Oh, I was listening loud and clear. I almost unmuted to come and make a comment, but
you could have chimed in anytime. Go ahead. I have thick skin, buddy.
Well, I know you do, but you run a roll. You were giving some good information, but you gave me a layup right there.
I did.
I was going to say I could vouch for that as a producer. How many times a week are you eating fast food in your car?
Fast food in my car. Well, when I was in the field every day.
Yeah, I'm guessing that's what they're asking.
Yeah, I would say, well, and in my 20s, because each year it was less and less with the fast food, because I felt like I got hit by a friggin' bus after I eat it. I would say you're eating in your car, at least 3 days a week, because if you don't have a lunch or, any kind of in-service where you're eating with physicians or office staff, you're going to be eating out of your car. So you don't have a budget. Most people don't have a budget that allows them these days to have a lunch in an office every day that you're going to be sitting with a customer. And most people don't live so in the center of their territory where they're going to go home at lunch. I don't know many people that did that and had lunch at their counter or in their kitchen. Once you're in the field, you don't want to kill time sitting and wasting time. For me to sit for an hour in my home kitchen just to feel comfortable, that was such a waste. So you're eating quickly in your car just to keep going. It wasn't a big deal for me, but I'd say the answer is about 3 days a week.
What's work-life balance actually like? Is it flexible, as people say?
Yeah, it is. And it's actually a good time to bring up that question, whoever asked that, because I actually gave a post the other day talking about, it stemmed from individuals that want to hit 300,000 a year in their income. And that where it got my mind racing about what is the one thing that all the high performers, what I would always do, what my mentors, with the high performers I've always spoken to throughout the years, guys, if you want to get to that next level, and you could be fine making whatever you make every year, and if it's not a lot of money and you're happy, good for you. But for the individuals that do want to be a high performer and take it to the next level, again, the competition's there. You're going to have to do more. You're, of course, going to have to work smarter too, but it's not that don't work hard, just work smart. All these different sayings you hear, that's bullshit too. You got to do a little bit of each, guys. And for me, and this got people all fired up online because they're like, this guy doesn't have a life. He doesn't go out. He doesn't care about his family. Like, that's all nonsense, guys. My suggestion was putting in a little time, say on a Saturday or a Sunday morning, which I love to do. I go for a workout in the morning. I come home, I get on my computer, I crank out emails. I can contact customers that I normally wouldn't do on a Saturday, because guess what? Most other reps aren't. So if you want to stand out, you want to see a doctor actually look at their cell phone when they get an email or a message on LinkedIn, sometimes that works. But my whole goal was to get ahead, because on a Sunday night, we all get the Sunday scaries. I realized the more I did that, I slept better because I'm already prepared. I'm not waking up on a Monday morning, which a lot of you guys will say you don't do this. You're always prepared. I know, guys, I'm very real. I wasn't always prepared. I was watching games, hanging out with buddies, having fun on a Sunday. And you wake up on a Monday morning, like, oh, shit. All right. And now you got to get your head together. You have your cases, but what am I doing after I leave that case? And you're kind of running around, not unprepared. And then that would make my sleep on a Sunday, I wouldn't sleep because I'd be a nervous wreck about what I have for the week. So my big suggestion, guys, do some work on the weekends. This is not going to take away from family time. That's nonsense. Okay. Go out Friday night, get bombed. I don't care what you do. Have fun. Enjoy your life with your friends. When you get up on a Saturday morning, if you're going to lay in bed hungover till 11, 12, okay, that's a problem. But if you get up in the morning and while you're having your coffee, you can have the news on, Sports Center, whatever you watch, and just crank out some work. It's going to make you feel better to get ahead. You're going to be more productive. If you want to get to the higher levels of income, a lot of you fought me with this online. If you're doing that, where individuals are saying they're making $300,000, $400,000 a year, and you're not doing this on a weekend, good for you. I don't necessarily believe that that's true for everyone on a consistent basis, but if you could do it, great. For me, it was getting ahead. I will promise you, if you start with these good habits, it's not going to take away from family time. You're not going to fight with your husband or wife because you're not around. I'm not saying sit there for 8 hours a day on a Saturday and ignore everyone. No, just crank out, start with 30 minutes to an hour of extra work. You are going to get ahead. You're going to see the results, and you're going to want to do more because it does help you get to the next level. Any high performer in any industry has to put in the work and go above and beyond if you want that. All right. So sorry, I rambled on a little bit there, but I hope that answers the question.
Joe, it's your show. You can ramble on as much as you want. What are the perks beyond money that make this career attractive?
The other two things that everyone always says, and I agreed to, was freedom and having those, high level clinical conversations where what you feel like, when you feel like what you're selling, what you're talking about is important and it impacts patients' lives. And then you also don't have someone over your shoulder every 2 seconds in an office, again, to be able to go, you know what? I don't have to wait till 5 o'clock to rush to get to the cleaners. Let me bang that out now. I got to mail these envelopes. Let me do that now. Oh shit, I forgot to get the birthday present for so-and-so. Let me stop at the mall real quick. I mean, guys, these are all things that no manager is going to bust you on. If your numbers are good, they're going to leave you alone. So that's the motivation. The better you do, the more they're not going to care what you're doing. When you start to not hit your number, that's when shit hits the fan and then they get on you. So as long as you're hitting your number, that freedom is priceless. So those would be my top three.
Joe, on average, how big is your territory and how much driving you're doing per week?
That could depend on where you're located. So I'll give you real examples. When I started in the industry, we had individuals out west that covered 4 or 5 states, because what these companies try to do is they want to match the potential volume that you have in your territory to try to make it as fair as possible when they start separating all these territories. So for instance, in pharma, they'll get a lot of the prescription data from the pharmacies, and they'll have a bunch of doctors that are worth a bunch of prescription business. And say we'll make it easy, 1,000 prescription potential, adding up all the prescription that those doctors prescribe in that territory, could be between 50 doctors in that territory. So they say that's going to be our number that we want to match around the country, so everyone has a fair playing field. Okay, so when you're in Idaho, you're not going to get that in in Boise. You're going to probably have to go a state or a couple of states. So you're going to have to travel much further. Now, the complete, polar end of the spectrum is New York City. I knew reps in Manhattan that a lot of them didn't have cars because their territory was 20 blocks and like 5 avenues. So it was a small little, they would walk everywhere, walk to all their accounts every day. They go in one building and there'd be 60 doctors in one building. And I'm not exaggerating. That's how some of them, it was crazy. So they have very small territories, but again, the potential would be there. So it depends on where you are. It could be, again, streets, like you're in Manhattan, to a couple of states. The majority of the territories are usually, multiple counties in a state, but again, it's always going to range. But I would say on average, they don't want you traveling in the car if you don't have to. They want you in front of offices. So trust me, they want to make it as convenient for you, but sometimes it's just not possible.
Joe, what's the weirdest thing that's happened to you in an OR?
Weirdest thing that happened to me in an OR. Well, a couple unexpected things. Lights going out, power outages in the middle of a case where there was a complete blackout, and you got a patient on the table. That's scary as hell. Things worked out, generators went on, but it didn't happen right away. I'm trying to think of weird, weird, again, there were more challenges than like weird things. There's always going to be a weird doctor that says weird things or just acts weird in an OR. Different staff members can just be weird and act weird or say things that you're like, is he testing me, or is that really a question? Or, what is he doing? Does he remember that we're supposed to do this first in the procedure? So it's more about challenges that come up. And the challenges that would come up a lot is your device and your system, like say for spinal cord stim, they would train you to troubleshoot. So just like a doctor, if things go well, anyone can do what a doctor does. It's not that hard. The reality is things don't go well all the time. So for an anesthesiologist, they get paid, 90% of the time things go as planned. And it's like, oh, wow, it's not that hard. They're just giving different doses. I see them giving this medication, that medication. They're putting a mask on them. They're kind of relaxing back there. It doesn't look that tough. Okay. Be in there when shit hits the fan. And a patient, for instance, I saw once was a malignant hyperthermia case with an 8-year-old little boy on the table that, that's an allergic reaction. And that's a very rare case. Most doctors have never seen it in their career. I happened to be in a case when it happened, and they literally had 30 doctors rush in because they have, minutes to save this individual. They have to call the hotline, the malignant hyperthermia hotline. There's a process. It is scary as hell. See, I was shaking because I'm like, I do not want to watch a little boy, God forbid, die on the table. They wind up saving him. Everything worked out well. But that was one of the most traumatic things that I saw that could have been, devastating. But it turned out, thank God, everything was okay. So it's not about weird. It's more about those challenges. But that's why the doctors, the anesthesiologists, the surgeons, they get paid the big money, because that anesthesiologist that came in and took over and saved that person, it was just amazing to see. That's why they get the big money. So the reason why you're going to get paid well is not the weirdness. It's the challenges that you got to think fast, in the spur of the moment, because the shit hits the fan and the stress kicks in. You have to act, and you have to make the right calls, to get out of certain jams that come up unexpectedly.
We have my buddy told me I just need to show up at offices unannounced. Is that actually a thing, or is he just crazy?
You got to do that sometimes. You're not going to, if you wait to be invited every week, you're never going to get anything done. So this is sales 101. Some days you got to just walk in there and see if you're going to get time with the doctor. Now you always want to be respectful. You always, if you can, book something ahead of time. You want to get a nice sit down meeting that he has you on the books. That's great. It doesn't always happen, guys. There's sometimes you just got to go in that office and talk to the physician. You've been trying to be respectful and try to set up appointments or in services. They can't do it. They're booked. They're busy, whatever it is. There's some days you just have to go and knock on doors. It's just part of sales. So it doesn't matter if it's med device or, any B2B sales company. You do that some days. You just have to. So if that's not for you, definitely do not get into this business because you will have to do that on a daily basis. You're going to have to go back to offices that told you, I don't want to see you. Sometimes it can be outright nasty, but you can't just give up and crawl under a rock and say, I don't like that office. They're mean to me. Of course, it's ridiculous. You got to have that thick skin to go back in there and try again. So that is something that if you don't have that thick skin, that is an absolute non-negotiable. You have to have that. But one of the things that everyone doesn't talk about is access. The access gets worse and worse in our industry. And I should have brought this up as one of the ugly parts of the business. People are going to say, Joe, I have tough skin. I'll be great in this business. Yeah, that's part of it. But everyone has tough skin. You have a thick skin. You have to have the ability to get creative, to get in front of doctors. Because if no one will see you, who cares about your thick skin? They don't even know you came. They don't care. So, but if they reject you, that means they actually saw you. That's a good sign. That means you could come back. You could get in front of them again. So be prepared for the lack of access. And how can you get creative to get your messaging to that doctor that won't even see you? That's where the real test comes in. And the high performers navigate that space to be able to hit their numbers. That's the key.
Leads kind of right into my next question, Joe. How do you deal with doctors who are complete jerks to you?
Yeah, I mean, if that's going to bother you guys, don't get in the business because there's a lot of doctors out there that are going to be nasty. And in their defense, they've seen 20 reps today that are coming in with different messages. They're interrupting their day seeing patients. They're not going to all be nice to you guys. They have real stuff going on. I mean, you could go to call on a doctor about whatever your product is, about this new detail aid that you want to show them on this new study or this new benefit that they just realized with a new study that was launched. And to you, it's all important. And the doctor had catastrophic events happen with a couple of patients that day. Do you think he wants to hear about your stupid new little study? No. So he could be very nasty that day. But you got to understand, they deal with life-saving situations. There's real lives on the line. So you just can't let it bother you. I've had doctors tell me off. I've had doctors scream at me in the operating room, scream at me, curse at me, tell me off like I was abusive to them. I didn't do a thing. They were just in a bad mood and they would tell me off, say, never come back in this, this effing hospital ever again. And I'm like, whoa, and again, you don't let it bother you. You can't go home that night and stress out and say, what did I do? Why was he mean to me? No, you got to brush it off, guys, and you come back tomorrow. Now, obviously, if a doctor is continuously abusing you, you don't have to take that, and you can nicely confront the doctor and say, could you please stop speaking to me that way? Because to me, you got to have self-respect and not let anyone walk all over you. But just realize it's sales. Sometimes they don't want to deal with sales reps, guys. So you can't let any of that really affect you. You got to brush it off.
We have. How often are you missing family dinners or your kids' stuff because of work? Well, Joe, you don't have kids, but.
Don't have kids, but family dinners, I mean, it happens. So you just got to, again, guys, you got to, it's hard at the beginning when you get into a new job and for instance, me and my wife, and this happened when we first got married. I had to travel a lot more. And then there's times I'm stuck in operating rooms and we're meeting friends at dinner. I mean, after the first couple of times, it could happen. So for me, it wasn't that big of a deal. My wife's understanding. I'm in an operating room and it's got delayed, or, we're still in this case. It's much more difficult than we thought. I would just text my wife saying, I'm probably not going to make dinner. It doesn't happen every night, but it could happen once a week, once every other week where you have to cancel something. That's just part of it. But you get used to it. Your spouse should get used to, your family member, whoever it is. They just should know, well, this is what he does. He's in a hospital setting. You're basically on a doctor's time clock. And you got to deal with that. If you can't deal with that, or your spouse isn't going to deal with that, get that out in the open at the beginning, and let them know that, because you don't want to get into this job where they're upset that you can't pick up the kids every day at 4:00. I mean, you got to set those expectations before you take the job, or it's going to be a problem.
Joe, do you ever deal with imposter syndrome or feel like a fraud when you're talking to doctors?
I've definitely had situations where, especially when I started in cardiology, I mean, there were so many acronyms and so much information going on dealing with ablations that you're just like, I mean, for me, I wear my feelings, I'm not that smooth to BS my way through too many situations. There's sometimes I'm not going to ask a question every time I don't understand something, because again, I don't want to seem like an idiot. But there were a lot of times where you're like, I don't even know what the hell they're talking about, and they're going back and forth. So, but the way I overcame that was owning my own development. I would read books on ablations. I would study. I would speak to the other reps that were in the room that we would work with, learn from them, learn from the doctors. Be humble, guys. You don't want to act like a know-it-all and then not know anything. That's a real imposter. If you're honest, I'm sorry, I just started. I don't understand. What were you saying before about that? That's okay. But you want to make sure that you're learning, not just sitting there, because no doctor or anyone else in the operating room wants to coach you and teach you every day. That's not their job. So you got to own it yourself to get better. So you don't have that. And this is something that, guys, it really only happens to individuals that don't put the work in. Most reps are going to want to get better. The more operating rooms you're in, the more clinical conversations you have, you're going to get better and better. But to fast track that, do the work yourself, own your own development, and you won't have that imposter syndrome for long or at all.
Joe, have you ever recommended someone not to get into this field, and why?
Oh, almost every other day. And it's one of the things my big thing, like I said at the beginning of the call, you have to be willing to put the work in, and you have to know that this is for you. You don't want to have that. Yeah, I think I would like this. Again, my friend does this, so I think I would be good at it. Everyone likes me. I'm a good salesman. Meanwhile, they never sold anything in their life. So you don't know what you're getting yourself into. But I'm honest where I don't tell everyone you should join the RepPath Academy to get into this industry if it's not for you. It's one of the things when I'm screening potential candidates is, how much do you really want this? A scale of 1 to 10. People have said to me, it's like a 3. I'm looking at different industries. Okay. I don't think this is for you. That's my suggestion. That's my opinion. I don't think you should get in this field. Figure out what you want to do, have a little bit more drive, and that should be in anything you do. So I definitely say that all the time. And it's the ones that when they say, I want this, I love it, they give their reason why, they have a passionate story about why they want to break in. Those are the ones I want to work with. Those are the ones that I'll say, this is for you. So yeah, there's definitely people out there. But so just really make sure, guys, that you want to commit to something for it to be your career, not another job for the next year or two. You want to make it a career, so you want to be fully committed.
Can you actually take vacations in this career? And is it possible to do it without your phone blowing up?
100%. So most companies are going to give you, on average, 2 to 4 weeks, depending on your tenure and all that. But typically you start out with 2 weeks vacation or, 15 vacation, 3 weeks. You could definitely have a nice normal life and have a lot of fun and travel the world. Me and my wife have done this. You will get text messages and emails when you're working, when you're on vacation. That's up to you if you decide to ignore them. I don't agree. I don't recommend that. I mean, I was on my honeymoon and I answered some phone calls and emails. People say, "Oh, you're crazy. What's the matter with you? That's pathetic." No, it's not. took me 5 minutes to answer a problem, as opposed to coming back to a shitstorm in 2 weeks when I got back from my honeymoon. It would be like, that would just stress me out so much. And I don't want to lose all the hard work I put into this. So to spend a minute here responding, most of them were emails and they were quick answers. But to prevent that as much as possible, and even though I still did this, sometimes it still requires your attention. You want to make sure you have coverage. And the good reps will do that, because there are cases that are going on. I had that all covered with different clinicals, other sales reps that would help me out. So the more that you're prepared, again, it gets back to getting ahead of your weeks. You definitely, before you get on a vacation, you want to make sure that all your important events and tasks are covered by someone, and even leave a voicemail that I'm unavailable. Leave an out of way message on your email to contact your manager, or reach out to this one. You got a great team, most of these companies, guys, where people will help you out. But if it does happen where they need your specific opinion and a doctor reaches out to you directly, I would always answer that call, because again, it didn't take me away from any of the fun or family time. It takes 2 seconds sometimes. I'd rather do that than deal with the lack of response later on.
I got a couple more for you, Joe. Have you ever seen unethical practices in medical sales, and how did you deal with that?
Seen it? I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to be faced with, competition that are doing unethical things. And the key is not to stoop to that level, because it will come back to bite you in the ass. It happens every time. There's individuals that doctors would tell me, oh, so-and-so said that his product can do this. I know he's lying. I'm not going to sit there and go, well, he's a liar. You shouldn't believe him. You don't want to say and stoop to their level and then lie to try to get the business. That will bite you in the butt. So just always do things right, guys. You might lose a sale here or there. Trust me, when you start doing unethical shit, you're going to wind up getting fired, or the doctor's not going to, you just want to do things on the up and up, because you do the right thing every day. Good things are going to happen. So don't fall for the little pressure because you want to make a little sale, or you want to get time with a doctor here and there. It's not worth it, guys. It's going to bite you in the ass.
I'm actually kind of curious. Do you ever see things from like the hospital's end doing unethical things?
I mean, not really. I'm sure there's stuff that goes on. But it's not like there's anything that I've really seen that was unethical. You see sometimes doctors doing things or staff doing things that you just don't agree with. Doesn't mean it's unethical, but there was never really anything that I saw like, whoa, that's bad. I was lucky that I worked with, a lot of great doctors, that would never risk their career, or a lot of these clinical staff, they're not going to risk their career or potentially going to jail or harming someone to do something stupid like that. So that's rarely ever really happens. I'm sure people have horror stories out there, but that's really not something that you even want to worry about or be concerned about.
Makes sense. Last one for you. I got, Joe, what would you tell your younger self before getting into medical sales?
Make sure you really want this. Like I said before, do your research, speak to individuals in the industry. Don't just go by the friend, the cousin, the buddy. Get the pros and cons, get the real story. If you have the opportunity to work with a rep and get in a field ride along, it's harder and harder because they can't, especially if you're getting hospital access, they can't just walk in with strangers. And a lot of companies, for liability reasons and all, they don't really like that. But if you can work with someone and get in the field and really see what they do on a daily basis, that's priceless. Because then you're going to really know what it's like day to day. When you speak to people, give me the real story. What's good? What sucks? And then make the decision. But whenever you make the decision, whatever way you go fully in. Don't be half-assing it, because you're not going to be successful and you're not going to be happy.
That's all I got for you today, Joe.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for fielding those, James. And thank you guys for all the great comments, all the great questions. Again, guys, please, individuals, speaking to the reps out there that want to break into this industry, please, first thing you do, reach out to me, RepPath.com, so you can learn more about the RepPath Academy. We can help you achieve your goals, guys. I hope you all do it by yourself. That's great too. But if you're struggling, don't be stubborn to think, I'm going to do this on my own, and then let another 6 months go by and you're in the same spot. Like we talk about there at the top of the page, own your own development, own your own path, get out there. You could see the testimonials at the bottom of the page of individuals that we just helped in the past couple of weeks break in. Some of these, one of the individuals didn't even graduate from college yet, and she got her first job. Another individual was there in the academy for 3 weeks and was able to get his first job. So please, guys, DM me on LinkedIn or reach out to me via the website. And I would love to help learn more about your story and if you'd be a good fit to break into this industry. And I hope I can help you do so. And one last thing, any lobby members, please make sure you're giving the code, the promo code Licata, Licata, when you reach out to me so you can get additional discounts. But I want to thank you guys again, as always, every Monday and Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern to join us for the RepPath Podcast. Thank you again for joining us and hope to see you next Monday.